Good evening, it's Wednesday the 19th of November and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Government action. US House compels release of Jeffrey Epstein files seeking answers for over 1,000 alleged victims. Gaza war. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu vows decisive crackdown on extremist settler violence in West Bank's villages. Crime breakthrough. Criminology students help solve decades-old Texas cold case, bringing hope for justice.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Sitmi Adhikari.
Good evening and thank you once again for joining us on World News Tonight on Derana News Channel. The US House voted 427 to 1 yesterday to compel the Justice Department to disclose unclassified records related to Jeffrey Epstein, overcoming months of delay. The Senate moved quickly to approve the measure and it now heads to President Trump's desk to be signed into law today.
The U.S. Senate agreed to pass a bill forcing the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Just hours earlier, cheering and applause filled the U.S. House as a rare, near-unanimous bipartisan vote successfully cleared the bill's first stage.
The yeas are 427, the nays are 1. The bill is passed.
Republicans and Democrats celebrated their victory together.
This is about the powerless, taking power away from the very powerful.
It's a culmination of a months-long bipartisan push that overcame fierce opposition from House Speaker Mike Johnson and President Donald Trump, whose longtime friendship with the sex offender has created a political fissure within his own base. But despite numerous attempts to block the vote, a small bipartisan group of House lawmakers forced the bill to the floor using a discharge petition in July. Facing mounting public pressure, the Trump administration abruptly reversed its course just days ago, with Trump stating on social media that the Republicans should vote for the file release as he has nothing to hide.
We have nothing to do with Epstein, the Democrats do. So I'm all for it. You know, we've already given 50,000 pages. You do know that.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson followed his lead. Following the Senate's approval, the bill will be sent to President Trump to sign into law.
A diplomatic row between Beijing and Tokyo erupted after Prime Minister Seni Takachi's comments on a possible Chinese attack on Taiwan, prompting China to suspend some Japanese film releases, warn citizens against travel to Japan, and reportedly curb seafood imports, forcing mass trip cancellations and economic fallout.
Tensions between China and Japan are rising sharply, with Beijing rolling out a wave of retaliatory measures following Japanese Prime Minister Seni Takachi's recent remarks suggesting that military action by China against Taiwan could justify a response from Tokyo. The fallout has now escalated into what many Chinese commentators are calling a Japan restriction order, a series of coordinated steps aimed at squeezing Japan across multiple sectors. The latest measure comes in the form of travel to Japan. China's foreign ministry issued a travel alert advising its citizens to exercise caution when visiting Japan. Major airlines, including Air China, China Eastern Airlines, and China Southern Airlines, immediately began offering free cancellations for Japan-bound flights. Within just a few days, some 491,000 tickets to Japan were canceled by Chinese travelers. China's Ministry of Education also warned that public safety conditions in Japan had deteriorated and that crimes targeting Chinese nationals were on the rise, urging students to reconsider plans to study there. Reports also emerged that the release of upcoming Japanese films in China would be suspended. Titles affected include popular animated franchises like Crayon Shin-chan and Cells at Work. Analysts say the pattern is clear. China is strategically selecting areas where its large domestic market gives it leverage and where Japan's economic ties to China are most sensitive. With state media warning that further countermeasures and even suspension of bilateral exchanges remain on the table, concerns are mounting that this standoff could harden into a prolonged diplomatic confrontation.
During a state visit in Abu Dhabi yesterday, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed signed a sweeping joint declaration to deepen cooperation in artificial intelligence, nuclear energy and defense. The agreement includes 7 MOUs spanning AI infrastructure, clean power and joint weapon development.
Pomp and circumstance were evident at the UAE Presidential Palace, with the summit beginning with an air show, a 21-gun salute, and a traditional performance. A sentiment of cooperation was shared between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. 7 MOUs were signed following the hour-long talks, with a focus on AI, nuclear technology, and the space industry. The leaders also announced a joint statement reflecting the UAE's roadmap to become a world-leading nation by its centennial anniversary in 2071, and South Korea's role as its key partner along the way. South Korea also plans to take part in the UAE's Stargate project to build a large-scale AI data center based on their energy mix strategies. The two countries will also expand cooperation on the semiconductor supply chain. On defense technology, bilateral cooperation will be expanded to joint development, technology cooperation, and local production.
This cooperative model will help increase the possibility of our exporters securing orders in the defense industry worth over $15 billion.
Discussions also included building a K-city in the UAE, as well as cooperation on culture, education, and people-to-people exchanges.
The Princess of Wales, Kate, made a powerful return today with her first major public speech since her March 2024 cancer diagnosis. Speaking at London's Future Workforce Summit, she urged business leaders to support children's early years, calling for more time and tenderness, not just profit.
Princess Kate using her voice to remind the business world what's really important.
Every child deserves respect and safety.
The Princess addressing 80 business leaders at a summit to drive investment in early childhood development in London. Her first speech since she was diagnosed with cancer early last year.
As business leaders, you'll face the daily challenge of finding a balance between profitability and having a positive impact.
Kate telling the room her thoughts on early childhood, giving an insight into how she parents Prince George, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis.
It is this texture, the weave of love, which forms a child's emotional world and becomes the foundation, the very fabric of resilience and belonging.
A happy home important too, according to the Princess, as she and Prince William settle their young family into their new mansion, Forest Lodge.
A loving home ultimately teaches us how to love and how to care.
There apparently isn't much care, though, for a new children's book by the disgraced former Duchess of York. 10,000 copies are reportedly being pulped instead of hitting shelves.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed decisive action after a wave of extremist settler violence in the occupied West Bank. In recent days, homes and vehicles in the Palestinian village of Jabba were torched following earlier attacks in Zaire, prompting a high-level security response.
A man examines the torched ruins of his car following an attack that burned homes and vehicles in Jabba, a Palestinian village in the occupied West Bank. On Monday, Israelis had set fire to homes and vehicles in the village after an earlier attack in the village of Zaire, according to the Wafa news agency that quoted officials. Ali Abu Loha, a Jabbar resident, said he was at home when the attack began.
We were at home when we heard banging. I went outside and saw masked men throwing rocks toward the house and had broken the car window. We got scared, so we left, and it turned out they were settlers. But then they ran away from that street after they burned that car over there, and my uncle's car, and my other uncle's car as well. They burned 2 cars that belonged to my cousin. This is what happened.
Another resident said attackers fired Molotov cocktails inside her home after breaking all the windows. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said later on Monday that he will urgently convene cabinet ministers to ensure that the Israelis behind the latest attacks are brought to justice. In a statement on X, he said, quote, "I call on the law enforcement authorities to deal with the rioters to the fullest extent of the law." The Israeli military said security forces were deployed to Jaffa and searches were underway for those responsible. The United Nations reported that settlers staged at least 264 attacks on Palestinians in October. That is the highest monthly tally since the UN began tracking incidents in 2006. Israel faces increasing international pressure over attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank, where 2.7 million Palestinians live. Successive Israeli governments have encouraged Israeli settlements to expand rapidly in the West Bank, which has long been at the heart of plans for a future Palestinian state existing alongside Israel. The UN, Palestinians, and most countries regard settlements as illegal under international law. Israel disputes this, citing biblical ties to the land and security concerns, with around 500,000 Israeli settlers living in the West Bank.
President Donald Trump welcomed Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the White House in a high-profile visit aimed at deepening security and economic ties. Discussions covered defense sales, including possible F-35 talks, major investment pledges, and cooperative tech projects, following efforts to rehabilitate the prince's international image.
U.S. President Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet Tuesday for Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. In his first White House visit in more than 7 years, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler sought to further rehabilitate his global image after the 2018 killing of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi, while deepening ties with Washington. During questions in the Oval Office, Trump defended bin Salman on the topic.
A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that.
That effectively contradicts the conclusions of U.S. intelligence agencies, who concluded that bin Salman approved the capture or killing of Khashoggi. Bin Salman has denied ordering the operation, but acknowledged responsibility as the kingdom's de facto ruler. Topics discussed between the two leaders included security ties, civil nuclear cooperation, and multi-billion-dollar business deals with the kingdom. Trump announced an agreement that Saudi Arabia would invest $600 billion in the United States, while the Saudi Crown Prince promised to up that investment to $1 trillion. It all underscores how much of a priority Trump has made of ties with Saudi Arabia, as uproar over Khashoggi fades.
Georgia's ruling Georgian Dream Party has intensified a crackdown, jailing or charging key opposition figures and moving to ban major opposition parties. Critics warn the country is reversing its Western-oriented reforms and edging toward one-party rule, prompting international concern and calls for targeted sanctions from EU and US.
Once seen as a burgeoning democracy after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Georgia is sliding into one-party rule. That has shocked many in the tiny South Caucasus country of 3.7 million. Leading opposition figures are in jail, exile or under charges, with the ruling party, Georgian Dream, aiming to ban the three main opposition groups outright. This month, the EU declared in a report that Georgia was now a candidate for membership in name only. The EU ambassador in Tbilisi said Georgia was no longer on the trajectory to join the bloc at all. Georgian Dream, however, says it is protecting the country from opposition figures who are trying to seize power and provoke a catastrophic war with Russia. That fear became palpable after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. It evoked memories of Russian tanks rolling into Tbilisi in a humiliating defeat by Moscow in a brief war in 2008. Georgian Dream lawmaker Nino Silosani described Georgia as an island of peace.
The war in Ukraine, the Gaza and Palestinian and Israel war, the processes and conflicts in the Middle East and Iran and Syria and everything. All these countries are around Georgia, but Georgia stays peaceful, and what investors and what business needs is stability.
Opponents paint Georgian Dream's billionaire founder Bidzina Ivanishvili as the author of the authoritarian shift. Some accuse him of being in league with Russia, where he amassed his fortune in the 1990s. Crisscrossed by oil and gas pipelines, Georgia could in theory play a major role in the West's aim to diversify energy and trade routes away from Russia. However, foreign investment has dropped to early 2000s levels, reversing years of pro-Western growth, with the country now appearing to lean towards Russia and China. In recent weeks, Georgian Dream has undertaken a flurry of measures that look to root out what remains of political dissent. The crackdown has targeted figures close to the ruling party itself, with recent criminal charges levied against senior government ministers. Arrests at nightly anti-government protests outside the parliament keep political activists in states of fear, despair and resignation. Dozens are languishing in jail or have been fined for blocking the road.
In Nigeria's Kebbi state, heavily armed gunmen raided a girls' boarding school before dawn, abducting 25 students and killing the vice principal. Authorities say he was shot defending the girls. Security forces, including police, military and local vigilantes, have launched a search and rescue operation.
At this girls' boarding school in Nigeria's Kebbi state, beds without occupants and police inside the compound. This is the aftermath of the latest mass kidnapping to hit the country's northwest. 25 female students were taken, police said, and the school's vice principal, Hassan Yakubu Makuku, shot dead. His wife, Amina Hassan, was at her husband's side when he was shot. She says she sat behind him as they prayed together, and then the gunman pulled the trigger. She rushed to him, she says, but was told by the attackers that if she touched him, they would shoot her. Police said the assailants, armed with rifles, stormed the government girls' comprehensive secondary school in the town of Maga around 4 a.m. They engaged officers in a gunfight, according to a police spokesperson, before scaling a fence and seizing the students.
The unfortunate thing has already happened.
Kebbi State Governor Nasir Idris said they would do everything possible to return the children to their parents. The police said tactical units, soldiers, and local vigilantes had been deployed to comb suspected escape routes and surrounding forests. Northwest Nigeria has witnessed repeated school abductions by armed gangs seeking ransom, despite government pledges to improve security in the region.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. In Venice, a wild bottlenose dolphin named Mimo has been charming tourists by leaping and swimming around St. Mark's Basin. First spotted in July, Mimo now draws crowds, but marine experts are warning that the young dolphin faces dangers from heavy boat traffic.
Venice's famed gondola rides just got even more charming, thanks to a new local, rolling, jumping, and flipping its way through this lagoon, to Venetians and visitors' delight.
There it is right there.
One vacationer capturing this video of the marine mammal last month, and some specifically setting out to find the dolphin and its aquatic acrobatics. Local officials say the dolphin, who has taken on the nickname Mimo, was first spotted in St. Mark's Basin this summer and has popped up more frequently in recent weeks. But the heavily trafficked waterway is a risk to the dolphin, prompting local rescue teams to try and nudge Mimo back out to open sea with acoustic devices.
It was right there. Did you see it there?
Though for now, Mimo not ready for this trip to Venice to end quite yet.
In Arlington, Texas, a breakthrough has come in a 34-year-old cold case. Criminology students from the University of Texas at Arlington reviewed files and raised fresh leads that prompted police to arrest 63-year-old Janie Perkins for the 1991 murder of Cynthia Gonzalez.
In Arlington, Texas, the 1991 murder of Cynthia Gonzalez had become a case gone cold. Jessica Roberts, just 6 years old, when her mother left home, never to return. Police found Gonzalez's body days later, shot and killed. A case that for 34 years had no suspect until police called on backup. The investigators, a class at UT Arlington, where criminology students get access to real cold cases.
We had to comb through about 400 or 500 files.
Students noticed Gonzalez was friends with a woman named Janie Perkins. The files showed the two shared a romantic partner who, before the murder, broke up with Perkins to be with Gonzalez instead. Perkins arrested days later for capital murder, her attorney maintaining she's innocent.
It was connecting all the pieces of the puzzle together and realizing that the suspect made statements and knew things that only the killer would know.
Cold case no more. Officers broke the news to the class. The collegiate sleuths, emotional, and a daughter, now one step closer to justice.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Sitmi Adhikari, and we leave you tonight with the visuals of an asteroid sparking an extraordinary chapter of renewal. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.adncenglish@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Thank you for watching World News Tonight on Derana News Channel. Have a good night.